Hello, Internet. Have you ever made a piece of art, put it out after it was finished, and then later on looked back and been like, I could have done this different. I could have done that different. Well, I don't think you should ever finish your art. I think you should abandon it. Leonardo da Vinci famously said, art is never finished, it's only abandoned. I'm paraphrasing a little bit, maybe, but I really think that that's true because art is not something that is fully objective or concrete ever, in my opinion. There's always something that you can do differently. And it might even depend on how you feel. Like if you're working on a painting and you're feeling a little bit sadder, maybe you're going to do more blue colors or something. This is very like generic, but I'm trying to illustrate a point here. And if you're more angry, you might do more red colors. And let's say you finish the painting and it's red, and then you look back and you're like, man, I don't really feel like this anymore. Like if I had made this now, I wouldn't have made it so red. So, did you really finish the painting then? I guess you can say you did, but if you had kept working on it, it might have come out different. So, I think the most important thing that an artist can do, the most important skill that an artist can hone, is knowing when to abandon the art piece. And I really do think this applies to all art forms, like even with music, I make music. That's my primary medium of art. I'll listen to songs that I put out years ago and I'll be like, damn, I could have done this differently. I could have done a different chord here, or like this part's too loud, or I should have said a different lyric in this part, you know? But it was just abandoned. I just let it be what it is. And obviously, it's important for you to like what you're doing. So you don't want to abandon something until you're ready in the moment to be done with it. And sometimes you have like depending on what you're doing, you might have a deadline. Like let's say you have a show like in a gallery. You might have a deadline where you need to finish these by a certain time. Or if you're like, meeting up with somebody in a studio. So you need to have music ready to go to show them, when you get there. Um I mean in that case, um you don't even have to finish it. But I forget where I heard this. It was maybe in a documentary about Basquiat. Basquiat's a painter, for anyone who doesn't know. I'm sure you've seen a million copycats of him on social media. But Basquiat famously was like adding things to his painting while they were hanging in the gallery, like right before the show. So I feel like that's someone who understands that you don't really ever finish art. You just abandon it when it's, time to abandon it. When you're ready to present it to people or when you have to present it to people. You're just letting it go. And that's a concept that I think is relevant to other areas of life besides art. But this is something that I struggle with in my art and in my real life is just letting things go, just letting them be what they are, which is essentially the same as abandoning it, and I think this is one of those times where art can really help your life in a very literal way because art can teach you lessons that you can apply to your real life, such as knowing when to let things go or knowing when to push through because you know that there's something on the other side that's what you want and is what you're hoping to achieve. And I think it works the other way too, like say you're a person who doesn't feel like they have a lot of control in their life and you have a lot of obligations, you have a job you don't like, maybe your like living situation isn't ideal, things in your life you feel like you're not in control of. Art is a great escape from that world where you can be like, I have full control over what I'm doing. I'm going to do everything in my power to make this how I want to make it. And you don't get to do that in your regular life. But you can kind of learn to find that balance, at least mentally, inside of yourself from doing art. Art is very powerful. And I know I talk about this a lot, but people forget that, I make music. People forget music is art. And people forget that there's no rules in art. If somebody doesn't like it, it doesn't mean that it's wrong. It just means that they don't like it. You know what I mean? So I think more people that make art should lean into the lawlessness of art. And that in itself is going to make it harder to finish something. Because if there's no rules for what you're doing, how do you know when you're done? You know what I mean? But if there's like a rule where you're like, okay, let's say I'm making a song, I do the drums, I do the chords, I do the melody, I do the vocals, I mix it, I master it, I put it online, I'm done. But if you're not following that rigid structure, then, you know, it's hard to know when something is done, which is why I don't think that it really is ever done. If you're making a product, maybe you can say that it's done, ready to be sold, and sometimes art can be a product. But even then, like think about the iPhone, I don't know if the iPhone is art. I don't know if I would consider an iPhone art. It obviously is a product. But even the iPhone, they're constantly adding new stuff to it. They're constantly updating it. They're constantly making new versions. Maybe it's not necessary to make all those updates. They're doing it anyway. But even something as like influential and important to modern society as the iPhone is never really finished. Like when they were creating the iPhone, they were like, all right, we made the iPhone. This is done. But now there's so many different versions. They've updated the software. They've added new things that you can do with your iPhone. So this is something I have to think about a lot because I struggle with black and white thinking. That's just something that I've always struggled with. I've dealt with it in therapy. I'm not going to get into that in this video. But I think a lot of people in life see things as black and white because it's easier for them to comprehend that something is either this or this. Living in that gray area can be mentally kind of tough because then you don't really know where you stand. You don't really know where the situation stands. And that's a scary feeling for a lot of people. They want to feel like they have some say in their life, have some control in their life. But I think learning to live in that gray area is really important and can be very beneficial to making art because, again, it's all up to you. It's all your perception. It's all what you want when you're creating something. And that's how it should be. So I think in general, I would say artists should not get so caught up in finishing something. They should just make what they want to make. And then when it gets to a point where they feel like there's nothing else that they can add, just let it go. Because I don't know. Art is tricky. Art is obviously there's things that you can do to get better at art, and there's things that you can learn to improve your own artistic process. But there is no one way to do anything when it comes to art. There's no right way to make art. So how do you know if you're doing it right? You know what I mean? Like it gets really cloudy. It gets really like amorphous if you overanalyze it. And I think part of overanalyzing art is figuring out when it's done. That is part of an analysis process because you have to sit and think about it. But again, this is just my opinion. This is just my perspective. Obviously, Da Vinci thought this too. I'm not comparing myself to Da Vinci, but this is just a quote that has resonated with me in my life. So yeah, I think more people should just make what they want to make, not worry so much about how it's going to come out, because the most important moments for me making music and making art have not been looking at something and being like, damn, I finished that. Because honestly, I don't finish things a lot, because I get caught up in my head and I don't just let it be what it is. But some of the most impactful moments I've had making art or music specifically is when I'm in the moment doing it and I'm, kind of letting out what I need to let out in that moment. That is what is so important to me. And that's the feeling that I try to capture when I make art. Lately, it's been harder for me to do that because like I said, I'm thinking too much. I'm putting too much analysis into the creative process of me making art. And I think that that's hindering. Again, this is just my opinion. I'm curious what you guys think, but I don't know. I just wanted to talk about that this week. I think that's all I have to say. Let me know what you guys think about finishing art, how you perceive it. Do you feel like you need to finish something to feel good about it? Can you let it go knowing that it could be better and that you can revisit it in the future? I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. I put out a new video every Sunday. So if you want to see a new video, you can come back next week for a new one. And yeah, I'll see you then.